Hey, what's up, everybody, and welcome to the Focus on Greatness podcast. I am your host, Hiram Roche, and man, I am excited. We have been having some awesome conversations. I want to start off by just saying thank you. Thank you to every person that has been liking, sharing, commenting, listening to it on the podcast, all of my Apple podcast people. I love y'all. I'm thankful for the support. Y'all are supporting and pushing your boy, and I'm excited for it. We are reaching men, helping men, impacting men's lives, and I'm excited about this journey that we are all on together. So, what I want to do today is I want to have a conversation tonight about something that I believe is a major conversation. I was just having a conversation with one of my family members, my cousin, and we were talking about this topic because I believe it's something that a lot of men, people in general, but specifically I'm talking to men in general, we deal with this. And this is not a blanket statement, so it's not every man, but it is some men like myself that have struggled with this, that has dealt with this, and I want to be able to help us to make sure that we overcome this. So today, what I want to talk about is the fear of being weak. I know you probably, before you check off, before you log off, before you stop listening to this conversation, I promise you want to hear this conversation, and I believe it's going to help you as it's helped me. So what I want to do is I want to start this off by defining something, because see, the thing is, when you talk about a specific statement like weak, you want to first of all clarify what you mean by that. Because see, weak can mean total different things to so many people. And so I want to be able to clarify this. And then I'm going to read something. I'm going to actually read a post that my cousin made after our conversation. And so, knowing that we were probably going to have this conversation on the podcast, he went ahead and made a post just to be able to see what people's thought process was behind it. I'm not going to read the comments, but I am going to read the post. And so this is what Merriam-Webster defines this context, or this defining this word weak as. This is what it says. It says lacking strength, such as deficient in physical vigor, not able to sustain or exert much weight, pressure, or strain. I'm going to read this one more time. The Merriam-Webster dictionary defines weak as lacking strength, such as deficient in physical vigor, not able to sustain or exert much weight, pressure, or strain. So I want to ask you this question, upfront honesty. Are you weak? Based upon this definition, are you weak? I'm going to clarify what I mean by this context of where we are afraid to be weak. I'm using this word intentionally, but the question is, are you weak? Based upon this defining definition, do you consider yourself as a man as being weak? I don't. I don't think you're weak. I don't think I'm weak. I believe that we have physical vigor. I believe that we can carry some weight. I believe we deal with a lot of pressure and a lot of strain. So, based upon this definition, you're not lacking strength, so you're not weak. So this is what I mean by this context. Let me read this post, and then I explain more and more in this conversation, so you can understand what I'm talking about. The post says this: just a thought, open to opinions. When women say they want a sensitive man, they aren't saying they want a vulnerable man. They just want a man that's sensitive to their feelings. The problem is, in order to be sensitive to your feelings, he must be vulnerable. How can he understand feelings that you show if you won't let him share his own? Now, why do I read this? I'm going to tell you why I read this. Because the reality of this statement and this post is, I have talked to various different type of men my age, younger, some men that are older than me, and in some of those conversations, what I have realized is that some men do not want to show their feelings. They do not want to cry. They do not want to be emotional because they feel like if they do these things, they will appear to be not to themselves, but to the spouse, to their in their relationships, in certain friendships, they would appear to be weak. So they instead of expressing those emotions, instead of being able to be vulnerable enough and open enough to be able to do this, they fear being looked at as being weak. So they don't do it at all. I've talked to some men that literally say when they feel like they need to cry, they will cry in their car alone and then get themselves together before they even see their girl. I've heard a conversation where they were saying, "Listen, I would rather cry in a corner by myself, gather myself together before I cry in front of my wife." But the question is why? When I asked the question why, all of the men that I've asked this conversation or this question to, the statement was because I don't want them to feel like I am weak. I don't want to be betrayed. I don't want them to of me in that way of being weak. Why would you be afraid of being vulnerable, but you connect that to being weak? So in this conversation, I want to be able to clear up two things. One thing that I want to clear up is again what we define this as is what is weak. But then I also want to clear up this other part and have a real dialogue about this because I believe that this is a major thing. It's a major struggle with a lot of men, even including myself. I'm, some of my friends, they would say, man, Hiram, you're very sensitive. Like, you will cry on the drop of a hat. You will do X, Y, and Z, this, and this, right? And now all of that sounds like a man that is open to his emotions, a person that is very vulnerable, person that is very open in that context, right? But then when I talk to my sons and I have conversations with my sons be like, Dad, I've never seen you cry. I'm like, what do you mean? I cried on this date. Like I'm giving you specific days. And it's like, no, in moments where we thought you would have been crying, in moments where we thought you would have shed a tear, we have never. Now, this is my son saying this. We have never, I have two boys, we have never seen you cry. Now, my oldest son at this point is 10, 11. My youngest is 9 at this point. And these two boys I'm trying to raise up with an awareness of not just their emotions, but them being comfortable in being able to express themselves. So when they cry, I don't tell them, hey, shut up, don't cry, be a man. I don't do those things because I realize those were things that we were taught. Those were things that were said to us that made being open and being emotional and being vulnerable hard to do because we felt like those emotions was connected to females. Those emotions were connected to weak men. And so, because of those conversations and because some of those statements and more of those statements, we have stayed in this place of where we have thought that showing these things, being open in these moments, or being emotional in these type of things are signs of being weak. And so, what I'm wanting to do in this conversation is one, really, again, have a real conversation about this because the thought that I had was, okay, if the context or the mindset behind you don't want to be emotional, you don't want to be vulnerable, you don't want to be open because you don't want your spouse, you don't want your girl, you don't want your friends to be able to see you as being weak, then the question really is not just one sided. The question is not just on us. The question is not, do I want to be open? The question is it the environment? Is it the environment that we're in that's not allowing us to be able to be open? That's not allowing us to be able to walk in that kind of strength? Because reality is that's a very strong man that knows how to be able to relate to who he is. When you cry, cry. The scripture even talks about how it says when it was time to dance, you didn't even dance. When it was time to cry, you wouldn't even cry. You didn't do what was needed to do in the moment where you needed to do it at. And so it's moments where I'm not saying let's just walk around crying all day. No, I'm not saying that, because that's not even normal. That's not even natural, because there's not things like that that make us cry on a daily. You know what I'm saying? But there's moments in time where you want to be and need to be emotional. You want to be able to be vulnerable. You want to be able to be open. But the question is, why don't we feel, or more so, why do we feel that we have to hold these emotions in? Why do we feel that if we express these things, we will be looked at, we will be portrayed as being a weak man? And one man that I talked to, it wasn't just it was I don't want to be betrayed as being a weak man, and I don't want to be betrayed after she thinks or feel like I'm weak, then I feel like she's going to want to walk over me. That's a scary thing to have in a relationship. So the question that I ask is, on our side, why do we feel like this has put the picture of us being weak? Is it only because is it only because of the culture that we live in, or the culture that we were raised in, the men that were around us? Like, for example, as I was contemplating and talking about thinking about this conversation, and even talking with my cousin about just our past and just about experiences that we have had in the past, and I was thinking about it, and I was like, man, I don't remember us as friends when we were younger, being emotional with each other. One, let's clarify that. But then also, I don't remember there were moments that might have needed to be. But I don't remember ever saying to my friends, this is something that I'm dealing with. I never thought about when we were in high school, or when as I was growing up. I would say more in the high school era, where it was like I thought that this was a cool thing to be able to be emotional like that. I didn't think that. I thought that you had to be the tough guy. You had to portray that you had everything going on, like you were strong enough to carry whatever happened, even if it was a situation where you got in a fight and you might have lost the fight. You still had to carry it, like, man, yeah, you got my L, but you know what I'm saying, I'm still good. Like, you couldn't walk away showing any form of weakness, because if you did that in your mind, your friends will look at you as being weak. But you had just an experience that just happened to you, that you should have been shown to be weak. But again, on our side, on one side, there could be where we don't want to do that, or we have feared to do that because we don't want to be weak. But the other thing on the other side is it the environments that we're in that do not shape or cultivate this type of thought process, or type of a space where you can feel safe to be emotional? You can feel safe to be vulnerable. You can feel safe enough to let your guard down for a minute. And instead of being Superman, be Clark Kent for a minute, and allow me to be able to see the pain that you are going through, and the heartache that you have, and the struggles that you have, and be able to give you space to express that. That might be through your conversation, that might be through you just crying and weeping, that might be however you need to get and express that out of you. But if we stay in a place, or in an environment, or in a mindset of where we're living in this fear that if I show these things, that I would then be looked at and portrayed as being weak, we will always stay in this mindset. And reality, like it or not, we will teach the generation coming behind us and behind them the same thought process, that it's not okay. And I understand the time that we're in currently. I understand it. It's a lot of different things, and a lot of different situations, and a lot of different ups and downs, and surely, it has a lot of different, caveats too. If you want to be open, and you want to be vulnerable, and you want to, it's you can be then whooshed into a whole category of different things. I get it. I understand. But ask yourself this question. While we are sitting in this context of being fearful of maybe, and it's not a for sure thing. Let's be clear. It's a maybe. Maybe if I express this, maybe if I'm open, maybe if this happens, maybe I will be seen as being weak. We would rather live there than saying, let me just take the chance. Let me just take the chance. So I'm gonna read this statement that I wrote down. I know the real fear is not sharing, but it's thinking that if you share, hear that statement. I know the real fear is not sharing. It's not actually you saying, I'm feeling horrible today. It's not just that. It's not just this thing of it's not just saying, listen, I don't feel like me today. I feel horrible. I feel beat up. I feel hurt. I don't feel good. I don't feel like I'm accepted. I don't feel like I'm good enough. Instead of saying those things, we think, but it's thinking that if you share, they will never see you as a man that is strong enough. Here it is to protect them. That's the real fear. If we boil it all the way down, the fear of being looked at as being weak is the fear as a man that you don't think I can protect you. And I would rather bottle all this in. I would rather hold all this up. I would rather keep all this bottled pain and stress and struggle and hurt and issues. I would rather hold all of this stuff in because I need you to know I can protect you. I need you to know that I can hold this thing down. But if I feel like I feel like in my mind that if I share and express to you, I'm gonna give you a practical in a minute because I'm going through this currently. Because I feel like if I share with you where I'm at and you look at me as being weak, then in my mind and in my heart, I feel like you might think I can't protect you. And in a time where you're already fighting to show what a man looks like. You're already fighting to be able to show and be the man because categories and things are changing. I get it, but you shouldn't be living in fear. So, personally, right now, I'm going through something, right? And move this mic up a little bit so I can get a little close to you. Um, and so, in this moment of where I'm at, transparency, I'm currently looking for a job, right? And while I'm looking for this job, opportunity after opportunity, job application after job application, door after door, situation after situation. I'm getting more and more where filling out applications, resume looks good, experience is good, but you won't hire me. Trying some more, get another situation, same thing, you won't hire. Door after door, situation after situation, closed, closed, closed. Internally, internally, I'm feeling like, okay, man, maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe, oh man, maybe I got to do something else. Maybe I just got to go get this small job and just, but I got a family to take care of and I can't do, and I'm stressing and I'm going through this but what if I'm gonna do, okay, whew, you know what? No, but I'm gonna trust in God and I'm gonna do another application. I'm gonna keep going forward and I keep going through these doors One door I got to, and I felt like this was the door. Like, this is it. This is the job. This is the position. This is the income. This is it right here. This is exactly where I want to be. And then the door closed. It's like, I suck. I'm not good enough. Uh, what am I doing? What am I doing wrong? And is it something I said? Is it something I, and I went down this road and I felt myself getting lower and lower. I felt myself getting mentally beating myself up more and more and more. But guess what? I never showed how I felt with my wife. And I'm going to tell you why. Same thing we're talking about tonight. The reason why was not because I don't believe that I can get a job. No, I know I can get a job. No, it's not that. It's not because, I don't think she loves me. No, I know she loves me. It's I didn't want her to feel like the one she's depending on is weak. And if I'm weak and I feel like I can't handle this, I don't want her to think that the ship is going down, that I can't control this. I don't got this. I'm not good to hold this thing together. So I kept my mouth shut. I bottled the pain up. I bottled the situation up. I bottled it all in. Why? Because I was afraid just to say I'm feeling weak. And now that might seem very small to you because your situation might be bigger than mine. But let me ask you this question. Do you feel that you can go right now to your wife, to your girlfriend, to your friend, to your whoever? Do you feel that you have someone you can go to right now and not be afraid to say, I'm feeling weak. I'm feeling very, I'm struggling here. I can't handle this. I feel like I want to quit here. I feel like this is too much. And if it brings you to tears, be willing and open to do that. Do you feel like you can do that? Do you have that person right now in your life currently that you feel would not look at you? You won't be afraid to feel like they will look at you as being weak. If you do, I'm so grateful. And if you share the inner workings of your heart, you have tapped into a gold mine. But if you men that are listening to this, you right now that are listening to this, and you're saying, listen, I don't know if I have that. I don't know if I have a space where I can be honest. Yeah, I know I tell my wife this and I tell my friends this and I tell my and I tell them this, but I don't tell them the real thing. I tell them just enough. Ask yourself, are you afraid? Are you afraid that if you actually share that diminishes who you are as a man? Are you afraid that at the end of that conversation that they will then look at you differently or treat you differently? What are you really afraid of? Why won't you really, I mean, when it boils down to it, why won't you really share where you are? And if, let's be honest, if it is the situation where it's the environment that I'm in, I don't feel like my marriage, my wife, my friends are an environment that is comfortable enough, that makes me feel comfortable enough to be able to have these type of conversations. That's okay. And I'm gonna tell you why I say it's okay, because you're clear that this is not it. But this is what I will say. I'm gonna say this to you as a man, and then I'm gonna talk to that woman that's listening also. Oh yeah, I'm gonna hit you too, because this is important. As a man, I dare you to take this moment, because I'm gonna do it myself. Take this moment to be open enough to say, "Hey, hun, hey, friend, hey, whoever. I just want to be honest and say sometimes I feel like I can't be open with you because I feel like if I'm open with you, if I share what's on my heart, really what's on my heart, that you will look at me like I'm weak." And I'm going to tell you why I'm asking you to do that. Because the purpose of fear is to keep you in bondage, is to keep you in a hole where you won't ever come out to be free. And sometimes the thing that we are afraid of is almost like a mystical character. It's not even real, but we won't ever know if it's real or not if we don't ever have the conversation. Now, I hear you, dude, and you saying, "Listen, man, I've had the conversation. I've done the test. I've tried it, man. I've tried to uh, have a conversation with her, and I tested her, and she failed the test. You know, I used to do that when I first got married. When we first got married, I used to send out test signals where I would ask her certain questions or make certain statements just to be able to see how she responds or how she reacts. And based upon those reactions, based upon those response, was based upon how much I felt that she would be comfortable, that I could be comfortable enough. This atmosphere was comfortable enough to be able to share where what I was feeling without feeling like she was, one, going to look at me differently, or two, she was going to use against me as a weapon. But again, while I'm doing these testings, we are growing. We are now about to hit on 18 years next month. We have grown in our marriage. So in us growing in our marriage, I have to come to a conclusion or come to a mindset of saying, listen, this might be me. It might not just be the environment. It might be me. It might be the environment might be the way it is because I haven't had the conversation. The environment might be the way it is because I never said to you, this is what I need from you. I need this place because if I don't get it off, if I don't get this out of me, it's going to come out the wrong way. It's going to come out in anger. It's going to come out in my frustration. I'm going to be real snappy with you. I'm going to do this or which is a danger. And we're going to talk about this in a later season, later on another conversation, or someone else might come by that do want to hear, that I do feel like they're comfortable enough to have this conversation. I do feel like I can be open enough to have this dialogue with them. And I don't feel like they will judge me or look at me differently. So let's close all the doors by just having the first conversation. Bae, is this how you will look at me? I need this. I need this space to feel like I can share where I'm at without feeling like you're going to look at me weak, without feeling like you're going to use it against me as a weapon. And women that are listening to this podcast, because even though this is a man's podcast, I've recognized that I do have a certain percentage of women that listen to this podcast. I dare you to take the opportunity to make sure that the atmosphere in your relationship is set to where your man feels comfortable enough to be able to be open with you with these things. And If he chooses to be open with you, if he chooses to be transparent about how he feels, if he does break down and cry before you, if he does say something that shows the softer end of his heart, do not use it as a tool when you get in an argument, because I promise you that'll be the last time you see that ever happen again. So I know that this is probably more of a, I don't want to say it's a rant because it's not. It's a real conversation that I feel like we have to have. We have to have this conversation. We have to deal with this thing because just like myself, where I have my two sons that are watching me, what I don't want is I don't want my sons to feel like it's not okay to be able to share or express your feeling, how you feel when you feel beat up in life, when you feel low, when you feel like you're not good enough, when you feel like you can't achieve this, when you feel like a loser, when you're scared. I don't want my sons to feel like that. I don't want my sons being raised or being raised with that thought process. No, I want them to understand that it's okay. That doesn't change you being a man. That doesn't change the picture of you being who you're supposed to be. That doesn't change anything. If anything, if anything, it makes you stronger because now you're becoming what is considered as emotionally stable. You can't be really emotionally stable if you're just holding in the pain. If you are a person like myself, I'm a creative. I'm a visionary. I see a lot. I have ideas for days that goes through my mind. But when I hold this stuff in, and I don't express the feelings that I have, or I don't express the thoughts that's going through my mind. Surely, when I'm feeling like I'm a loser, and I feel like I'm just I'm not good enough, or I'm just a failure. Like when I feel those. When I have those feelings and those thoughts that are going through my mind, the creative juice that flows in my mind is almost used like a weapon against me, because then I start imagining, well, if I am this, then this is probably why this is happening, and this is why this is going on, and this probably will happen if and I go through this all this thing that leads me down this track. And for me, a person that has struggled and dealing with depression, it does not help. So I know the importance of me being able to get this out of my system. I'll say this, and just to show you the power of this and the importance of this. So I had a time where, uh, and this was probably a couple years back, where I was very, very low, emotionally low. I'm talking about low, 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 like knocking at the door of of suicide low. And when the reason why I was that low was because of exactly what I just shared. I had all of these emotions, had all of these feelings, I had all of this stuff bottled up inside of me that I was not expressing. I was not expressing because I was afraid that if I share these things, that someone, my wife, my friends, some other people that were in my life, that they would look at me as being weak. They would look at me as being in error. They all these different thought processes that was going through my mind. So instead of sharing these things, I kept them to myself. I would cry by myself. about 5 years ago, which was at that time probably about 2.5 years before, my uncle, which was one of my greatest mentors, which was almost like a father figure in my life, he had passed away. A major move, a major hit to the heart, I mean, to the core, that I was still dealing with at this time. And I was bottling all of this pain. It would be moments where I would be in my car and I would cry in my car. And then I would get myself together and then go in the house and be the happy, joyful husband, great dad that I was being at the time, and just continually doing that. And but I was drowning in my pain, and it became worse because life doesn't stop just because you don't do your part. So it became worse and worse and worse, to the point where I remember, and this is just, again, just transparency. I remember going through this moment where I felt like it probably would be better. I would be more at peace. I wouldn't have to worry about if people saw me weak. I wouldn't have to worry about if people said I was crazy about the struggle I was dealing with. I wouldn't have to worry about the fear that someone would use what this feeling that I have against me. I wouldn't have to worry about any of these things if I would just take my life. That's how bad it got for me. That's how bad it got for me. Because of this statement, because I was afraid of being looked at as weak. I was afraid I was afraid to have the conversation with my wife. I was afraid to be honest about where I was, to the point where the only conversation I had with my wife at that point was, "Hey, I need you to hide this and hold this so I can't find it to do any harm to myself." I got to that point all because I was afraid of being weak. I was afraid that you would see me as weak, and then that means you would see that you would think in your mind that I can't protect you, that I can't protect my family, that I'm not a man, that you might use these things against me as weapons the next time we get in an argument, or the next time you I do something to you outside the house, not just my house, not just my wife, but outside the house where you don't like it. And now you would use these things as a weapon against me. So, my encouragement to you, sir, have the conversation, because most likely how they see you will never change. And understand, you're not weak. I end off by reading this definition again. You do not lack strength, you are strong. You are a protector. You are a man that is going through life. You are a man that's going through struggle. You're dealing with stuff every single day. And the healthy life that you want is to have that conversation, so you can have a place, so you can have a space where you can have someone you can communicate and say, "Hey, man, this is where I'm at." Now, I know all of us is not in relationships. So I'll say this. That's what the Greatness Tribe is. It is a place, it's a space, and I'm gonna create a space, a smaller space where we can have some dialogue, not just a big emotional pool. No, we're gonna be able to do other things, supporting one another, building one another, helping one another. We're creating a culture, the type of culture that we want. So this is what the Greatness Tribe is for. I'm here for you, just like I know you're here for me. So I want you to have the conversation. Don't be afraid. And the woman that's listening, be open. Create the atmosphere for him that will allow him to feel comfortable enough to have a conversation and feel comfortable enough to say, babe, I know we're going after this, but I'm going to be honest. I'm just afraid. Without you panicking and stressing out and flipping out, just allow him to share where he's at because you want a healthy man, not just a physical strong one. So I love you all. And as always, continue to be great. I'll see you next time. Talk with you later. Bye bye.